Okay, so we're taking a deep dive into Crime and Punishment. It's Dostoevsky. It's dark.
Oh, it's definitely dark.
And it's got us asking, why'd he do it?
Right. Right from the first page, you're thrown into Raskolnikov's world.
Uh,
And it's bleak. I mean, here's this guy, former student, brilliant mind, but crushed by poverty in St. Petersburg. You can practically feel the walls closing in.
and that's before the murder even happens, right? Dostoevsky really takes his time getting inside Raskolnikov's head.
Oh, yeah. He wants us to understand not just the crime, but the psychology behind it. So we see Raskolnikov struggling with this idea that they're ordinary people who follow the rules.
Right.
And then you have the extraordinary ones, the Napoleons, the movers and shakers, who stand above morality. They can even, justify murder for the greater good, at least in their minds.
So he's already got this warped philosophy brewing before he even picks up the murder weapon.
Exactly. And poverty fuels this twisted logic. He's desperate, he's isolated, and he's starting to believe his own dangerous ideas. Like there's this one scene where Raskolnikov overhears this conversation about a pawnbroker, a greedy old woman.
Oh, this is where things get really interesting.
Right, and it's like a switch flips in his mind. Suddenly, this abstract theory has a target.
And he starts to spiral.
Big time. Dostoevsky's a master at showing those mental cracks widening. Nightmares, hallucinations, paranoia. He even returns to the scene of the crime, drawn back by guilt and some dark fascination.
You can practically feel his sanity unraveling page by page. It's intense.
It really is. And that's where Porfiry Petrovich comes in.
Ah, the investigator.
Now, Porfiry, he's not your typical detective. He sees right through Raskolnikov. He knows the guy's a pressure cooker about to blow.
So how do you handle a suspect who's already halfway to losing it?
It's a chess match, a battle of wits. Porfiry uses psychology, he prods, he pokes, all to get Raskolnikov to confess, not through force, but by his own unraveling.
There's that amazing scene where Porfiry basically lays out his whole strategy, right? Like he's letting us in on the secret.
Like Dostoevsky's giving us a glimpse into the mind of a master manipulator, but also someone who understands the weight of guilt, the burden of confession.
And all of this, the murder, the psychology, it's playing out against the backdrop of St. Petersburg's underbelly. We've got poverty, we've got desperation.
Oh, absolutely. You've got characters like Marmeladov, drinking himself to death to escape his reality. You've got Sonia, forced into prostitution to support her family. Dostoevsky doesn't sugarcoat any of it.
He's showing how poverty can crush the soul, right? Push people to the brink.
Exactly. And then there's Katerina Ivanovna, a woman clinging to her dignity, but completely broken by circumstance. Remember that scene at Amalia Ivanovna's?
Oh, heartbreaking.
She just explodes. It's this raw outpouring of frustration, despair. Dostoevsky showing us the human cost of poverty, how it can push people to the edge of morality.
And suddenly the question isn't just, did Raskolnikov do it? But did society, in a way, help shape a criminal?
That's the brilliance of Dostoevsky. He forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths, those complex connections between individual choice and societal pressure. And, Dostoevsky, he doesn't let us off easy with Raskolnikov. He shows these flickers of, conscience, especially with Sonia.
Right, Sonia. She's like this beacon of goodness in his life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then Raskolnikov turns around and does something awful. And you're like, wait, is he redeemable at all?
It's such a roller coaster. One minute he's giving away his last kopecks, the next he's pushing away the people trying to help him. What is Dostoevsky doing with this?
I think it's about that duality in us, Raskolnikov isn't just some villain in a textbook. He loves his family, he cares about the downtrodden, but he's also arrogant, manipulative. It's like Dostoevsky saying, hey, look inside. We all have that potential for darkness.
So we're not off the hook just because we haven't murdered anyone. Makes you think, right?
Right. And then there's Fyodor, almost like the shadow side of Raskolnikov's philosophy.
Oh, yes, Fyodor. He's a piece of work.
He's done terrible things, maybe even worse in a way, because he feels no remorse, no guilt whatsoever. It's like that nihilistic freedom Raskolnikov flirts with. But Fyodor, he's living it.
It's chilling. Like Dostoevsky saying, this is what happens when you abandon all moral boundaries.
Exactly. But even with Fyodor, there's this weird, ambiguous moment. Remember when he helps Dunya, saves her from that awful marriage proposal?
Yeah.
And the money he leaves for the orphans?
It's almost like even in that darkness, there's a flicker of something human.
Right. And that brings us back to Raskolnikov.
Yeah.
Seeing Svidrigaïlov's end, his suicide, it's a turning point.
Like he realizes that nihilism leads to a dead end, literally.
Yeah, and maybe emptiness isn't what he truly wants.
Yeah.
So he confesses, To the authorities, sure, but the real confession, the one that matters, is to Sonia.
He needs that from her, that absolution, that belief in him.
Exactly. And Sonia, she believes in suffering as this path to redemption, which is so Dostoevsky, right? It's not just punishment, but this inner reckoning, accepting the consequences of your actions. That's what Siberia becomes, this physical manifestation of his internal torment.
And yet Sonia follows him. She's with him, even there.
She represents that unwavering hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption is possible, even after such darkness. Those final scenes, it's not a fairy tale ending, but there's a glimmer, a sense of something new emerging in Raskolnikov.
But it's up to us to decide, right? Can he truly change?
That's the question Dostoevsky leaves us wrestling with.
It's like Dostoevsky embeds this whole other level into the story, right? You've got the crime, the psychology, but then there's the philosophy of it all, the ideas swirling around Russia at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Utilitarianism, nihilism, socialism, they all sort of rear their heads in Raskolnikov's journey. He's wrestling with these big, meaty concepts alongside his own demons.
But Dostoevsky's not hitting us over the head with a philosophy textbook, is he? It's all woven into the story, like you said.
Right. Take that scene where Raskolnikov justifies the pawnbroker's death, arguing her money would do more good elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's utilitarianism, raw and dangerous.
Trying to rationalize murder with philosophy.
And that's the point Dostoevsky drives home.
Yeah.
Even seemingly noble ideas can be twisted, especially when we prioritize intellect over basic human empathy.
And yet, even Svidrigailov, the embodiment of nihilism, shows those glimmers of kindness. It's like you can't escape your own humanity, even when you try to reject all meaning.
It's that push and pull that makes Crime and Punishment resonate even today, that tension between personal desire and societal responsibility, between logic and emotion. Dostoevsky isn't giving us easy answers. He's making us ask, what truly matters? What are our boundaries? How do we navigate a world filled with darkness and injustice?
It's a lot to sit with, but that's the power of Dostoevsky, right? He leaves you thinking long after you've closed the book. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from our conversation?
I think Dostoevsky would want us to feel a bit uneasy, because the line between good and evil, it's not always clear. We all have that capacity for darkness within, but, and this is crucial, there's also hope. Even in the depths of despair, redemption is possible. Meaningful connection exists in the most unexpected places. And those are questions worth wrestling with, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's been fascinating to take this deep dive into Crime and Punishment with you. Thanks for joining me.
It's been a pleasure. Always a good time digging into Dostoevsky.